Welcome to 365 Christian Men, where every day we aim to inspire and encourage with real-life stories about men.
May 15th, Paul White. Paul is an internationally recognized author of Christian nonfiction. He has pastored and taught in several churches and conferences for almost 30 years. He hosts the Deeper Daily podcast, where he talks listeners through the scriptures. Seeing believers awaken to the goodness of God's grace through Jesus is Paul's greatest passion. On this date in 1971, young Paul pitched his first Little League baseball game.
Your failures don't define you. Your Heavenly Father does. Paul White recounted from his childhood. The aroma of fresh brewed coffee heightened my senses, and I realized Dad must be eating breakfast. Still groggy from the restless night, I managed to dress and stumble into the kitchen. I had to make my plea before my dad's schedule for the day was set. Being one of 12 children meant I had a father who worked 16-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week, just to make ends meet. And the infrequent off days quickly filled with errands. He looked up from the table and I said, "Dad, guess what?" I didn't wait for an answer. "I'm pitching my first game today. Most of the Little League season I spent warming up in the pitcher's box. I nearly lost all hope to pitch a game, but after repeatedly hassling my coach, he finally gave in." My dad responded, "That's great, son." I hesitated, hoping for something more from my dad, but silence. "Dad, do you think you can come to the game?" "Son, I'm expecting to be called back into work this evening. There's just no way I can take time this morning to watch a ball game," he responded. I said I understood and I tried to understand, but my 10-year-old heart had just been stomped. I didn't want my dad to watch a ball game. I wanted him to watch me. Besides, what difference did it make if I pitched a no-hitter if my dad wasn't there to see it? Later, I stepped onto the pitcher's mound and I tried to muster up some enthusiasm. After all, I'd worked all season to get to pitch, but it seemed pointless. I threw a warm-up pitch and then, leaning up against the fence behind home plate, I saw him, my dad. My heart raced like a thoroughbred, and beads of salty sweat trickled down the side of my face. I tried to concentrate. It's the arsenal of throws that separates a good pitcher from a great one. I signaled to the coach that I was ready. The batter stepped into the batter's box, and I glanced at my dad for a second and then tried to focus on the batter. Standing on the mound, with 46 feet between me and my opponent, I pictured my fastball sizzling across the plate. Strike one. I'd mesmerize my opponent with my dad with my curveball. Strike two. With only one strike left to go, I'd take the first batter out of the game with my unpredictable, slow-moving knuckleball. But my first pitch sizzled right into the leg of the batter. I felt a churning in the pit of my stomach as the umpire shouted, "Take your base." I tried to play it off as an intentional walk and hoped my dad would think it was a strategic pitch. And I did manage to strike out a batter here and there, but things continued to spiral downward. By the end of the fourth inning, I had no command of the ball and my arm was at the point of blowing out. To keep me from suffering a severe injury, my coach took me out of the game at the bottom of the fifth. I sat in the dugout and sulked until the game was over. Our team never did regain the lead, and I had lost us the game and humiliated myself in front of my dad. While the other team hooped and hollered, "We're number one," I shuffled over to my dad, doing all I could to avoid eye contact. The word failure, like a neon light, flashed in my mind. As I fought back the tears, I felt the warm embrace of my father's arm around my shoulder. "You'll get him next time, son." Looking back at that experience, I realized the importance of seeing myself as my father sees me. Ephesians 1:5-6 says, "He predestined us to adoption as sons through Jesus Christ to himself, according to the kind of intention of his will, to the praise of the glory of his grace, which he freely bestows on us in the beloved." Have you ever failed at something important? Is that your whole identity now? Your failures don't define you. Your Heavenly Father does.
Thank you for listening to today's story. Every day of the year, our hope is to inspire you with real-life stories of faithful men who have gone before us. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Join us tomorrow for another story at 365christianmen.com.